Okay, I'm unmuting now. Okay, do you want to kick it off, Laura? Because I think we're gonna talk about the plan first, the PHA plan.
Yeah, sure.
The admin plan.
Okay, so, one of the things that code requires health authorities to do each year is to update them on our proposed activities. And everything we put in the PHA plan, we don't have to do, but, it needs to be in there for us approval. So this goes with our fiscal year, which is, April 1st to March 31st. This is the one that they've approved for this year. We go in depth on it, usually in November of each year when we're looking at the next year's plan. But we wanted to make sure that you had a copy of everything on here. It goes into, like how many units and vouchers we have, what we might be looking at as far as redeveloping. Some of our fair housing objectives that we aim for, the demographics of the residents. And some operational things as far as, we want to maintain high performer status and our return estimates, and things like that. This is on our website, so it's always accessible, but we just want to make sure each president has this to help ask any questions or help us look at what we might want to include for the next update. So that is just a real general overview. And like I said, it's something that code requires us to do annually. It's usually about a 6-month process to update it. So our next plan revision typically comes out August, September, and then gets board approved by December. You have to take it to the mayor and do some other things before we submit it to HUD for approval. Any questions? I mean, I know you have to read it, but you know the process.
Right. Okay. Well, there's no questions, we'll move on to the next group. And if you have questions about that, and you want us to circle back during the meeting, that's fine. And we can address them. I'm Kenya Pleasant, and I am the Chief Real Estate Development Officer for the Housing Authority. And I oversee all the, my department works on all and oversees all of the development for the agency, and that includes acquisitions, that includes redevelopment, and new construction opportunities. And I think that many of us have had the pleasure of meeting you, but we have 2 new faces. And I want to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves, and I'll start here since you're sitting close to this.
With Chris Whitedale, Housing Development Department Manager, started well over 2 months ago. Yeah, talked with Harris Park.
We've met, I'm Rachel, yeah, I'm also another, so I specifically help you with women's parts, and so we have what we should have somewhat, and all of that, so.
So how familiar are you with Heritage Park? Have you heard about it?
Yeah, I know, I got a couple people I know that live over there.
Okay.
Talking about the transition and then I used to work at a storage facility that was like right.
Oh, right across the street?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so you're very familiar.
Mhm.
So we've been meeting for, I started in September with the agency. There's been a lot of activity that predates my arrival, and some of my colleagues were involved in the discussions in and around Heritage Park. for the last, let's call it like 12 months, I think that there's been, a lot of changes. One is because we brought in a partner to help with the project, but this kind of like timeline that we're talking about kind of focuses on those last 12 months to today. So there's been a lot of conversations for a number of years. I think we now have a vision for what we want the future of Heritage Park to look like. And that's what this first slide kind of represents. You know, the Heritage Park now and what we're trying to envision for the future. And it took us a while to get there. And so if we go to the next page, this will just give you an idea of where we've come from and how far we still have yet to go. I think the good news is that we're making progress, and the purpose of these conversations that we're having right now with the residents and then with the council or the advisory board is to, I think, just get input and to just provide an update. But I think also in looking to the future, I think it provides a good insight to what may be happening in the future at other projects. And, you know, there's been a lot of things that lessons learned, but I think going forward, you know, it's really important for the housing authority that we be engaged and figure out ways that we can increase, you know, this participation from what we're experiencing currently to more increased numbers, because I think the more input, the better, I think, for everyone. And I think that where we are now, that's that first page that shows the vision for the future, it really reflects a lot of intention that we had made based on feedback from folks in the past to make sure that we really include residents. And so that's an important part, and we want to make sure that we include residents, the advisory board, you know, other critical stakeholders. So that's what this meeting is about.
I know one thing as far as being a person in the community, I like the fact that, like, back in the day when I was younger, it was always known, people would call it the projects, and you would be thinking about brick apartments with no carpet, and it was like a very standard way of that they look. And I like now that you can go in communities and you don't necessarily know that that's a housing development by the way that it looks. So that's one thing I do think that I like that we're implementing as time goes, that the stigma of how it used to look as far as projects being brick with no carpet, it's not like that anymore. So it makes it more, I think, acceptable for people who want that in their community, because now they don't think it's like an eyesore in the neighborhood, because it's not, it just looks like a normal neighborhood or a normal house. So that's one thing I want to commend you guys to make sure that you include that the way it was when I remember seeing housing projects when I was a kid, there what they look like now.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the ultimate goal, and I think that going through this process enables us to do that, because, and we'll talk about it, as we can use different funding sources that we were restricted from using before. Now we can use those to help make it indistinguishable between this is an RHA site or this is an affordable site versus this is a market. And the goal is to really have those units mixed within the community on the same site, neighbors living next to them. So a little bit of background, like we have this plan now, what does it mean? We're gonna request HUD approval to do what we just, you know, to enact that vision, right? So what does that really mean? And so we're requesting HUD approval, called Section 18 approval. And that means that once we get HUD's approval, that they're signing off on a couple of things. And one is that the cost of the repairs at the site are so high that they won't allow us to rent it, because they're saying that it's obsolete, or the cost of repairs is so much that you might as well start it. And so that's one thing that they're gonna sign off on. The other thing that they're gonna sign off on is that they accept our plan for the future, and that's to make sure that we provide housing for all the existing residents, or an opportunity for all the existing residents, plus even more housing. For, that will be low, moderate, and even some market rate units. And the description of our relocation. Those are the things that we're agreeing that HUD is, that once we get that approval, that HUD is signing off. And that's a section of the code that's called Section 18. This is a process that allows us to do that. And really what it is, it's a change from one system to the next. So we're changing from Section 18, we're gonna remove those units from public housing. And we're gonna transition them to another program that will enable us to finance it differently, like I said, so that we can have those mix of uses. Because we are restricted in the types of funds that we can use at the property based on the program that it's in. And so once we remove those, we sell.
You have a slide on here for someone just joined.
Oh, yes.
I'm trying to do it secretly.
Did I close it?
I'll keep working on that, I'll jump in. Just with a comment based on what you said about, you know, seeing the different types of properties, being an improvement. Our new CEO is very focused on the resident perspective and wanting to make sure that everybody has the same level of dignity and respect, and that, you know, we're all housing and making sure that it's not the eyesore or standing out, or like you could drive down the street and say, this side needs help, that side's really nice. Like, we wanna make sure that everybody has same opportunity to feel a sense of pride and we're all running out.
Or even in school, the kids don't have to worry about, oh,
Yeah.
somebody's picking on me,
Yeah.
they know I live in such and such neighborhood,
No.
you know, it's, yeah.
And everybody deserves the same level of respect, we're all humans, so.
Yeah, I love that about the CEO, he's very. He's got a great humanity side. He wants to make sure that everything. His perspective is just a refresh of the same.
I think, yes, that's the experience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Got it. Yes.
That's what it's doing.
yeah.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I joined RHA. Was because of that vision and a focus on the people. I think a lot of times it's easy when we start talking about development, to just talk about buildings. And I think that one thing that I do appreciate about the culture now is that it is a focus on the human aspect of it too. And I think even in going, if you look at our strategic plan, like you'll see that throughout our strategic plan, we talk about partnerships, we talk about customer focus, and just being mindful of how the built environment impacts the people that live there. So.
I wanted to say one thing that I just love about this new. Development that, the Fort Yard. I don't know why I think of Christmas in New York, but it really just reminds me of like. That's here, you know. I think it's just
Oh, I like that.
beautiful, yeah, I really do, and I think there's gonna be so many opportunities for. People of different backgrounds to gather and find the commonality, you know, like, we're all the same, you may have a little bit more income than I do, but we're all. You know, connected in some way, and so I think that is really gonna be. I love that.
Yeah, and I think that was really important in terms of the design aspect. That we didn't want to just have like individual buildings. And we have, this is the market rate building, and this is the affordable building. And there's no reason or way for folks to like engage and interact. And that courtyard, that centerpiece is like a really, I think. something I'm really excited about too, to try to provide that like central gathering place to give people a reason and a place to, you know, get to know each other. Otherwise, there would not be that. And I've experienced that in different developments, throughout living in those buildings and then also helping to create those communities. That if there's not that central location, then you do miss out on that.
I have one more question. Are you all going to have, I don't know why I just thought about the businesses in that development as well, like the ground floor or?
Yeah, and this isn't in, no, you're fine. It's because it's not really in here, but I can share with you one of the site plans, that we proposed. It does include a mix of housing, retail, and then some community space. And we think in that retail space, it'll be like businesses, whether they be like local businesses or larger, national brands. We're also trying to, have an early childhood education center there. As well as we've had some conversations, with different groups, for a health component there. Maybe an organization that's like, but just like either urgent care or primary care.
Yeah.
That will be on site, and that'll be available, you know, to the public. I mean, we're in a prime location in downtown. And so I think that there's a lot of, positive activity that we'll be able to draft from to have those things on property. But that is the goal. We're working, one of our development partners is Raleigh Rays. And so they're, you know, a local development partner, and I think they've been helpful in helping us to identify, you know, some potential local businesses that might be in that space. Again, going back to partnerships. Getting the business in this space, local, small, local, hopefully folks from the community, you know, persons of color, women-owned businesses, that is an easy part. Oftentimes, the challenge is in making sure that those businesses can sustain, right? So it's one thing to start a small business, but to have it sustain and continue. We're trying to identify resources that can help those businesses. Whether that be through like counseling or credit or, you know, just consulting services. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. All of the businesses won't be those small businesses, but some of them will. Because what we don't want is to have this retail space that we put in there and it's not occupied.
Yeah.
So. We have anything else, Mia?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
So just going back to the section 18, it's a disposition, that's what this is about. We're gonna sell the property or transfer it to another entity. I think one of the things historically has been that people are saying we're giving up and it will no longer be an RHA site, and that's not the case. So it's gonna be to another entity, which we're required to do, but RHA will still control that entity, so that means we'll control the property. I think-
Like the transition with Washington Terrace homes, like when they trans.
No, that was a little bit different with Washington Terrace.
Do you remember when we switched to RAD at Valley Brook Meadow Ridge, Terrace Park of Berkshire?
But that would be the closest.
Yeah. And so again, once we do that and we dispose of the property, then that allows us to go after those different financing to do the redevelopment. Because that's what this whole process is about. And there are certain things that we are going to ask for, be required to do. As part of that, and one is, so there's 122 units there currently. We are allowing and promising a couple of things. All the residents that live there right now will have the opportunity and the right to return. All of the units, all the residents will continue to have their rent based on their household income. So they're still, their rent will not change. And it will, well, the rent will continue to still be based on 30% of their household income. And when the new development is built, we are promising that at least 122 of the new units will continue to have subsidized rents, where rents are based on their household. So the plan right now that you see here. Right now, there's 122 units. We're planning to have anywhere between 550 to 900 units. And so in this development, at least 122, it could be more, but at least 122 of these units will be subsidized where rents are based on household income. Yeah.
So when you talk about that, everybody that lives there now is eligible to come back. So in the past, people are saying, well, oh yeah, they say that, and then they tell us we can't.
Right.
But the reason is that you would not be eligible, if you live there now, the reason you would not be eligible to come back would be.
Criminal, like so you're gonna be relocated. And if you have a criminal history that would prevent you from renting now, that would be the same thing.
And if you have to be lease compliant, right?
Lease right, you have to
Some
be
people
lease.
Just construe that and. So just like if you were staying at Heritage Park, you have to pay your rent, you
Right.
have to be a good tenant,
Yes,
and. If you do not do that and you're not paying your rent, and you're getting ready to be evicted. But now people are coming back to Heritage Park, they will not have that same opportunity to come back, correct, because they're not being leased.
that's right, but I don't wanna, we're
Yeah,
gonna
I'll
talk about
talk about
relocation
relocation.
late, yeah.
A little bit further.
Okay,
And then the other thing in terms of the right to return to this, that's a great question, Suzanne, because that leads us right into the relocation discussion.
Oh, it's my turn now.
Yeah, so the other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pay and provide assistance for residents for relocation. And Laura is gonna take it from here, because she's
Yes.
heading that up.
So I'll be heading up a relocation team. We are still in the works of getting that team set with staff. So right now, we're a little thin boned on the staff that we're gonna be filling out with more people coming on board for that. And the next couple of slides are really from the resident perspective, answering some of the main questions that we've gotten throughout this process. First one is, what is the assistance can I get? So if you are in the US legally, which everybody on a lease should be. If you're listed on a Heritage Park lease agreement now. If you're in compliance with your lease, and that would be between the resident and the manager to work out all the lease compliance. And they're not being evicted. Then you automatically should get the relocation assistance that's gonna be offered to our family. There's gonna be two options about how you get your relocation assistance. One would be, give me a flat fee based on my bedroom and I'm gonna spend it on reasonable costs. And there is a chart in here that has what the bedroom sizes are. One of the things our CEO has had us do since we created this slide is increase these numbers for inflation. So these are actually 9% higher now than our actual relocation than when that we made this, so, you can do it that way and get a flat fee, or you can keep track of your receipts and turn them in at the end and get the actual costs that you spent.
Okay.
So you elect how you wanna get it, the residents would sit down and choose, do they want the flat fee, knowing that might be a little bit less? Or do they want to keep up with their receipts and do it that way and see if it ends up a little bit more, there's pros and cons to each side, it's just however they wanna handle it, and Ms. Sue over there has been working with a ready to rent class that's helping teach generic budgeting and financial 101 classes to the residents over there so that they can hopefully understand more about this process and make a decision that really matches what their needs are on an individual basis.
So will it be a cap on that? Cause say, for instance, if you're saying you have 3 bedrooms, I'll give you a $1,200 check to move. Or if you wanna keep your receipts and then I say, oh, my receipts equal up to $5,000, is there gonna be a cap to know to say like, hey, you're gonna give this, to know that the person can get their money back?
Yeah, there's not a budgetary cap on the receipt and getting it that way. But we do ask it to be reasonable moving costs is how it is specified, so they would wanna look at their receipts and make sure like this went to, a storage facility to move your furniture during the process, or a moving company. Or, helping with your security deposit for your new place, things like that. If they came back and said, I don't know, this is extreme, but like party supplies for $400, like that would not obviously. But they would go through and just make sure that the receipts that they're getting are matching that reasonable relocation.
Have you guys thought about like, just because I know I used to work for Extra Space Works, like setting up contracts with these different companies, because that way you might get a cheaper rate to say like, hey, because I know a lot of times with us, if I have a person that I know is gonna rent 10 units, instead of charging them $80, I'm only gonna charge them $40. And that way I know for sure that this person is using the money, that $1,200, not to go party, but you're really using it to go pay Extra Space Storage, because now it's basically like, I gotta make a voucher payment saying, here's $800 to go to take the Extra Space Storage, and I know for sure that you're gonna go and do what X, Y, and Z I told you to.
Yeah, so when we bring on the relocation staff, which we're in the process of doing that, they'll be building a lot of those connections and trying to, come up with game plans. We talked about having them reach out to like the Wake County Public School systems to see if there's anything with that, moving costs or like a hired moving company, especially for
The elderly.
elderly and disabled families who might have an extra barrier
Yeah.
between being able to do it like an able-bodied person would be. And then there are some categories in the relocation plan, they're not necessarily on this presentation, that RHA is looking at providing above and beyond these things, like, packing supplies. If there are things for utility or security deposits that would go above and beyond this, what they're getting for a flat fee, we would look at helping them, establish that up to a certain amount.
Mhm.
So that they have somewhere to go to that would accept the voucher if they use a voucher, and have everything set up. Now, if they're going to public housing, it would be an easier transfer of those things, because they're already in our system and they've already paid a deposit. But with the vouchers specifically, there might be some of those extra categories that they would have to meet, because we would no longer be the land. We would just be providing the subsidy part. So in addition to receiving funds, we're asking residents right now to do a survey to help us identify, what does each family want to do? Where do they want to go? What are their concerns? Are they concerned about utilities? Are they concerned about transportation? Are they concerned about having a flat or a special unit that maybe they have mobility issues, getting some of those things so we can start coming up with those game plans and seeing, okay, maybe 40% of the property is gonna need us to have some sort of transportation come out on one day and give a tour to some of the properties and things like that. We're gonna be providing mobility counseling and advice. Everybody's gonna get sat down one-on-one, and they're gonna get a folder and a caseworker, and they're gonna go through all of those individual questions. But the goal at the end of this is that each family has to go off-site, so we want them to go into a house that is either the same as what they are currently, or hopefully even better. I mean, Heritage has some older things since it's from the 70s, so we're hoping that everybody goes into something nicer. I mean, just off the top of my head, I know I've gotten a lot of questions about, you know, like dishwashers and washing machines, like those might be the things that we're saying, they want something nicer that they have newer, more modern than. So the next question that we get are, you know, like, where am I? So they can go to another public housing property. They can go to a RAD property, which are the Valley Brook Terrace Park, Berkshire Village, and Meadow Ridge communities. Or they can get a voucher and they can go out on their own and get a landlord. One of the things we're looking at doing with that specifically is setting up similar to a job fair, a landlord fair, where maybe we have landlords come in with applications for their property and we can try to help make some of those connections. Another thing that we're lining up currently is we have started doing a project-based voucher program. And we have a specialist on staff that is working with families to go ahead and move them now, if they're ready to move now. Because she's got 2 new properties that have come online that have signed agreements to let Heritage Park residents get first priority. And these are brand new builds, they'd be the first resident ever to live in these apartments. Yes, ma'am.
So if they're ready to go now, they're able to do that if they qualify.
Yes, we have some things that we're still in the process of creating, but we are in what we're calling the early move category. For relocation system.
Bedroom sizes.
Yes,
I know that there's that are or bed.
which one, 5 bedrooms, yeah. So we've got a couple options for that. In general, it's hard to find 4 and 5 bedrooms on the open market. So one of the things we're offering to do with those families is to look and see if they want to divide up, and that is completely their choice, but I know we have had some families reach out and say, my kids are adult age. And would it be possible for them to establish their own household without having to go through the waiting list process like normal? So that would be an option for larger families.
Yeah.
Public housing and RAD properties, we do have some other properties like Kentwood and I believe Meadow Ridge that we're in right now, go up to the 5 bedrooms, so there would be possibility of transferring there. Our Section 8 department has agreed that they are going to give vouchers for families who want vouchers for their current bedroom size and not a smaller bedroom size, because there's slightly different standards between the public housing and the Section 8 family sizes. So they're offering to go up and get larger family size vouchers for our families coming out of the voucher, coming out of Heritage Park into the voucher program. So there are things we're doing to try to help work, but that is gonna be a concern, just because they're not as common to come across. Typically, they are harder to find. I think we have at least one family that has 10 household members currently.
Yes. Yeah, but along that, would you have partnerships with other landlords too, outside of the project-based vouchers? Just through our housing choice voucher program? Where we're looking at what are the needs now in those units? And even can you move those people as early movers, even though they're not the project based, because there's units that are big.
So we're doing what we can, but again, we're always open to other scenarios. I mean, can't predict everything. So if somebody comes and says, hey, what can we do about this? Or I found a landlord that'll take it. Can I go ahead and get my voucher now? We'll be working with families. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to be losing their housing assistance because of the relocation. Worst case scenario, if someone were to take a voucher and not be successful finding a place, we would just absorb them and transfer them into our public housing communities just to make sure that they still have a roof over their head. We do not want somebody to go out into a situation and be at risk of becoming homeless because something didn't pan out. We would just absorb them into our other properties to make sure nobody's losing housing assistance because of this. I mean, it may not be their top preference, but
They'll have.
they're still have.
It's housing.
They'll still be housed, yeah. We'll do our best to make sure everybody gets a reasonable top preference, but in the worst case scenario,
Right.
housing will continue, their assistance will continue, they'll still have a roof over their head. And then,
I have a question, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Is there gonna be any kind of like, driver assistance, transportation assistance, because sometimes with kids now, they're gonna be going to a different school from the neighborhood that they're in?
yes, so, we are going to be working with Wake County Public School System to try to help address any of those issues. We're offering with some of the project-based voucher units. They're going to be leaving the summer, trying to maybe see if any of the families with kids can move during the summer, so that we're not interrupting the school system, any of the costs or benefits that they get can go towards helping pay with transportation costs. And then also we're looking at doing some things like busing for property tours and things of that nature. So
Yeah.
hopefully we want